figuring out my rock bottom, had a basement beneath that, and eventually getting to the point where I was just on my knees. Yeah, it was this endless and impossible search that ended in me thinking fundamentally there's something wrong with me, that I've avoided, the little girl in me that I've avoided, the pain that I felt that actually was my responsibility to soothe. You can't logically think your way out of trauma.
You
And
can't
here we
pray your way out of it or spiritualize your way out of it or medicate yourself out of it.
I cheated on him and I became the worst version of myself. I did what was done to me. I'm willing to try anything. I've tried every religion, but I had never been willing to give my life to Jesus.
Well, good morning. Welcome to Calm the Chaos podcast. I'm so excited today. I get to interview Kate Mulholland, and this is actually just a remarkable individual that I've met. As most of you know, I focus a lot on flow and getting our lives in flow. And in order to have flow, we have to have our personal life in balance, our family values aligned, our public manifestation in alignment, and then how we spend our wealth. Wealth meaning we are well, emotionally, mentally, spiritually well. And here's just an honest confession. I create the coolest models ever to help do all of this, but there's one piece that I miss. There's one piece that I'm just not the expert, and it's actually in the individual part. And actually the precipice, the waterfall, the most important aspect is getting clarity on our personal life, doing our personal work, and having the courage to face our fears with reality. So I went looking all over the world to find the top healers that can actually help us do this work. And I have to tell you, Kate Mulholland is the bomb. And today I'm going to interview her, have her share some of her insights. The thing that I love about Kate is, first of all, she's so honest, direct, and bold, but also she is gentle and soft and will bring you along. Her practice is breath work, and she uses this to actually really help you work through the traumas. She will often say, if you don't deal with the issues of your childhood, you're bound to repeat them. We'll get into that in 1 minute. So welcome, Kate Mulholland, direct from South Africa. I would have loved to have had Kate in studio, but maybe a little bit too long of flying time. So welcome to the podcast, Kate.
Thank you, Rich. It's good to be here.
So first of all, I'd like to start where we're going to be doing a little course together where we help participants in my audience and my following to maybe help break some of the patterns in their life. But before we jump into that, I'd love to hear just a little bit of your background and your story and share with our listeners what went on in your life. What brought you to here?
Quite a story. Oh no, it's not really. But I grew up. I've always lived in South Africa. I've spent a bit of time in the States on and off, but I was born in Johannesburg. And I think how I could describe my life up until about a few years ago is I was born with this seeking, this thirst, this seeking, this just knowing that there was something more. And obviously, as a child growing into an adolescent, like you don't have the awareness, really. You don't have the tools to understand like what it is that you're seeking for. And I, like so many others, had a few things. Like I didn't have abusive parents. I didn't have anything like that. But, there were a couple of things that happened growing up in my childhood that really shaped how I saw the world, how I related. And through no fault of my parents, I'm never here to blame. I have great parents. But it was kind of like, as I understood it, I took on, my parents got divorced. I took that on as, I wasn't enough to make my dad stay. And they had a really, a really, I suppose you could say, pleasant like divorce. Like my dad bought the house next to my mom. It was kind of like that. There was no like real fighting. But to the 9-year-old Kate, she didn't understand that. I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the awareness to kind of process it. No child does. And I think it really took me on a journey, not just that, but everything else, my life, my choices. I was always seeking something outside of myself, is a good way to put it, to try to numb the pain. It was almost this discomfort. It was this pain. And, that led me down quite a dark road at points. I battled addiction. I battled an eating disorder. I mean, you can't name it. I had it. I was in a very long abusive relationship that was very confusing to me because I didn't clock it at the time. I kind of took it all on as that it was my fault. And I think I just made a lot of decisions based on the patterns, based on my wiring. And it took me a really long time. It took me finding breath work. It took me delving deeper after the breath work. When I got clean and sober, when I recommitted to my faith. And I feel like I don't even think I had a faith before that. I was always searching. I've tried, I mean, Rich, we spoke about it on our retreat last year. Every single spirituality, every single religion under the sun, I did it. I tried it. I was always seeking through drugs, through people, seeking that relief and always feeling fundamentally like there was something wrong with me because I was not getting it right. Like I wasn't soothing that itch. It was this endless and impossible search that ended in me thinking fundamentally there's something wrong with me. I'm never going to meet the right person. Clearly, I'm just broken. I can't have a positive relationship. Everybody always leaves. That was my narrative. Like from when my dad and mom got divorced, it was people always leave. And I guess now that I understand it, I formed these patterns of pushing people away, of self-sabotaging, of staying in the same painful situations because I didn't know how to get out. And yeah, it kind of all sort of culminated in a few rock bottoms, figuring out my rock bottom had a basement beneath that, and eventually getting to the point where I was just on my knees and I was like, there's got to be something more than this. So in those moments, I deepened my faith, I got clean, and I was willing to do anything. I committed to a very deep breathwork practice, a very arduous, I mean, you've gone through it, staring down the belly of the beast, as you like to say, that journey of shadow work and taking accountability and really looking deep here as like, there's nothing wrong with me, but there's so much that I've avoided, the little girl in me that I've avoided, the pain that I felt that actually was my responsibility to soothe. And I figured out along this way that, I'd been in therapy for a really long time and that wasn't helping. And I tried affirmations and I tried meditations to manifest your dream love and all of this, but you cannot manifest when your outer world is in chaos. So that's where breathwork came in for me. And, it's been such a powerful tool because our traumas live in our body. It's a nervous system problem. You can't logically think your way out of trauma.
And you
And
can't
here we
pray
sit.
your way out of it or spiritualize your way out of it or medicate yourself out of it. And, I hear it and see it so frequently. And oftentimes the more significant accomplishment of the individual, the deeper the trauma is that's driving it. And I think, Kate, I got to acknowledge that, I mean, the fact is you kept trying. I mean, many just give up. That's the remarkable aspect of trying everything and then keep going. And I would love to maybe ask you what the precipice event was that brought you to your knees that then said, this is what I'm going to do. And I call it facing your fears fierce with reality and having the courage to then come out of it. I think those of us that have broken the patterns, we've come to that same precipice moment. So share that a little bit with you. And then I'd like to quickly go into the breath work and now how you've just become one of the great healers. I have to tell everyone, I actually saw Kate take a group of strong, vibrant men and mold them over the course of 3 or 4 days. It was unbelievable, the trauma that was released. So all of you struggling with challenges, addictions, it's coping, and there is incredible hope. So Kate, take us down, if you would, the path of when you hit rock bottom and then how you actually specifically turn that around. You alluded it was breath work. Go a little bit deeper with that, and then once we get to that, we'll go into pattern breaker.
Okay, buckle up. It's so interesting because I was seeing a client today just to preface this, who is really struggling to like get honest about things and take accountability. And there's a lot of shame. And we all sit with so much shame and think the things, especially as a recovering addict. I feel like, there's things that people have done that I've done that I just felt was so deeply unforgivable and so terrible. Like it's, addiction turns you into the worst version of yourself. That's all I will say. And I actually shared this on the retreat. So it's interesting I'm sharing it again. But yeah, so my rock bottom was probably the worst moment of my life because I became the worst version of myself. And I think it was because I got caught, actually. Because if I hadn't gotten caught, who knows, maybe I'd be dead by now. I don't know. But it ended for me, kind of my addiction and everything ended for me when I was seeing this wonderful guy. It was just after my divorce. It was a very difficult very difficult, very long, very painful, very destructive divorce, a very painful relationship. And I had started seeing this
You
guy.
had to navigate, if I recall, you actually had to navigate, him eventually taking his own life and holding your
Yeah.
daughters together.
Yes, so that was kind of what I think I mean, everything I think just culminated and set things into motion. And yeah, I remember somewhere along that very dark path, I had this wonderful boyfriend, really thought, this is it, I'm gonna marry him, but I had dealt with nothing. And now that I look back, I had no business being in a relationship. And I ended up like one day got really high, really drunk, and I cheated on him. And I became the worst version of myself. I did what was done to me, which was the most painful thing that was done to me. And I couldn't understand how someone could do that to me. And I had become that. And I think it took a while. It took a few months for like the reality of that to come crashing down. And, I met with him last year actually to just like really apologize. And this is like 3 years afterwards. And I just said to him, like, I'm so sorry. And he was like, the worst thing is you didn't give me, I had no closure. And I didn't remember this. I thought I'd given him closure, but I was in such pain and I was in such a dark, twisted place with, the addiction and just everything. And yeah, in that moment, I was just on my knees and I was like, I'm willing to try anything. I've tried every religion, but I had never been willing to give my life to Jesus. And I was like, why? Why? I got curious enough to be like, why am I willing to try everything but that? And at that point, I was just like, my mother had found out, everybody had found out. Like, I was just in so much shame and so much regret. I couldn't believe what I had done to someone who was my childhood friend. I mean, it was like a beautiful romance story, picture book kind of thing. And I'd hurt this person who'd actually just done nothing but love me. And that, they say hurt people hurt people. So that was the rock bottom. And it's crazy to admit it, but I really live by this principle that shame dies on exposure. It dies when you drag that into the light. The light heals so much. And that was my journey. I gave my life to Jesus. I got clean and I really started to deepen my breath work practice. I was on my own for a while. I thought I just needed time to heal. And it was faith. I started running, just getting fit and getting my mind right and getting my body right, like really starting to understand, go deep into the neuroscience of breath work, into like what is actually going on in my body. Why am I repeating these cycles? Why am I doing the things that I hate? How was I able to do that? And I was actually only able to get to that point a couple of months into it because I had so much shame. And I think the shadow, it's so painful to look at because we keep so much stuffed away in the dark. And for me, I just thought I was completely unlovable and it was hard to look at it, but to finally break through that and to look at all the parts that I'd been running from, like the pain, like that 9-year-old who I was just fulfilling a cycle. And if somebody didn't leave me, I would do something to make them leave. I didn't want to be in a relationship, but I didn't know how to end it. So it was this cycle of creating chaos and then being in the longing again and then trying to get that back that I knew I had to break. So that was the start, the rock bottom to the journey. And just, yeah, honestly, my faith saved me. Like that, I think something happened the day I got rebaptized. And I'm not I mean, I really did try all kinds of spiritualities and magic and all of these things, which it's crazy. Had to repent. A lot of repentances has to happen in this house. But I tried everything and I don't know how to explain it. I've been trying to get clean since 2019, but I didn't have God. I didn't have Jesus, and I got baptized, and it was like this weight of addiction, of trying not to, of battling my thoughts every single day, of not knowing how to just not do the wrong thing. Just, if there was a decision, I chose the wrong way every single time. I chose the person who was going to hurt me. It was just the way it was, or I ended up hurting good people. And from that day, and I know I've put in a lot of work and it's the nervous system work, but, I can't sit here and say it's all me because it's not all me.
I hope you're enjoying this episode of Calm the
Chaos. If you would like to receive more tools, frameworks, support, and resources, go to richchristiansen.com, and they're all there available for your free use.
Well, that's beautiful, Kate. You know, I love the Oliver Wendell's home for this side of simplicity, I would not give a fig, but for simplicity on the other side of complexity, for that I would give my life. I don't think it's uncommon for most individuals to continually chase and go down the same path over and over, just trying to figure it out. I think it's why, you know, you hear the abusers keep going back to be abused, and they keep marrying alcoholics or being alcoholics or whatever else. And I think it's coping, and we got to have a little bit of grace to that. I think whatever your higher source or power, when you plug into that divine God source universe, whatever that is, when you find that, then that roots and anchors you. And I do think that there's healing modalities that work far more efficient than others. And as you know, breath work has been a major practice in my life also. It doesn't discount that there's multiple paths, but I particularly love the breath work modalities that you use to help rewire and regulate the emotional and nervous system. I mean, in my experience, talk therapy can actually be helpful, but it's slow, and oftentimes the therapist is more dorked up than than you are. So and oftentimes imposes their own lenses and views. And so anything we can do to actually heal. So if we could shift gears a little bit, thank you for being so open, disclosing, giving a little context, because I really don't have a lot of respect for someone who actually hasn't went and lived through the experience. And as you can see, Kate has the context for having done that. So and again, I've seen her really regulate others through it. So I'd like to talk a little bit about your statement. If you don't outgrow your childhood trauma, you either heal it or you repeat it. And obviously that was your scenario. Can you reflect that a little bit of what you've seen with others? And then we'll jump into pattern breaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, to add to that, if you don't heal your childhood trauma, because that's your patterns, if you don't heal your patterns, you keep repeating them. And I think what I've seen so many people come to me who are versions of myself in men, in women. And it's understanding, it's almost they grasp that they don't want to be doing what they're doing. And it's this place of really being stuck. It's stuck in the dark without a headlamp, not knowing where the path is, knowing that there's something wrong, intrinsically wrong, like something is not sitting right, but they don't know how to get out of it. They don't know how to change their patterns. They keep going back to the relationship. And this was my case. I kept going back. I knew, why do people go back to abusive relationships? They go back because the body is wired to stick to what is familiar, to return to the familiar. So that is why, like, when you're trying to change a pattern, I had someone say to me once, the best advice that I ever got was, whatever you want to do. This was in the early days of my recovery when I was still going to meetings. And he said to me, he's like, just do the opposite. Just do the opposite for now, because, and I was like, it's so true. And that's what it's like trying to break a pattern. So because it's so uncomfortable, your body and your mind is going to come up. Your mind is the best manipulator. With any excuse, your body will go through pain, like everything, just to get you to go back to what's familiar, to the known path. Because, we'll choose the familiar hell over the unfamiliar heaven every time, because it's unfamiliar and the body doesn't know what to do. So that's what I've seen time and time again. And then I've seen through the breath work, through people learning to regulate their nervous system. So my method is regulate, rewire, and realign, which we'll get into later. But the regulation part, firstly, you can't even deal with traumas. You can't even deal with patterns if your nervous system, if you're constantly in fight or flight and you are just triggered and you're sitting up here and it's nothing is going to go in. So the transformation in people that I've seen just from starting that work, starting to use their breath, and it's so empowering because once you learn it and you start doing it in real time, it's amazing. It's amazing what it does to your body, and people every time are shocked at the simplicity of.
It's really fun actually how it's starting to become mainstream. When I started doing this 12 or 13 years ago, it was actually, I discovered it in the Himalayas in the breath work to get high on the mountain. And then I started seeing divinity experience out of it. And then I saw the highest performing athletes. And so I was really quiet about it. It's like, oh, this is foo-foo. Everyone thinks you're crazy. But now it's everywhere. I was Kerry Jack. Hey, Kerry, on his podcast. And right before when I says, Rich, I found this really helps. You'll think I'm crazy, but here, do deep breaths with me together. And he actually counted it. I was watching Boston Blue last night, and right there on TV, one of the guys went through a major traumatic experience. He looked him right in the eye on TV and said, here, now breathe with me. In 3, 4, 5, hold 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, whoo, and just saw him come down and says, "Who taught you that?" "Well, my grandfather taught that me." The wisdom passed on. But it's just being proven what a powerful regulation tool it is. And so pointing out you are the bomb in breath work, Kate. And that's, I want to just point out that one of the fun things Kate and I is doing together is this little course. It's a jump-in course that's simple, straightforward, and just really kind of fun. A little 3-piece program course we're calling Pattern Breaker that can jump your toes into this in a simple little way and help you get introduction of maybe some of this release in your personal life and clarity if you're dealing with anxiety, stress, frustration, depression, some kind of addiction that we all in one form or another have. It just some are glorified, others are not. Then this pattern breaker will help. So, Kate, if we could go into that a little bit for a minute, and I could just query you a little bit. You always do talk about, and I love the verbiage about regulate, rewire, and realign. So let's go into that now, if we could, and talk about first of all regulate and what's involved in that.
Sure. So why I've I glossed over it a bit, but why I've structured it this way is because taking it from my own life and my own experience, I was aware of these patterns. Then I became aware of it, and I became aware of through therapy. I love therapy. I think therapy is great, but if you're not pairing it with some real somatic release work, I was seeing my therapist for, gosh, like 8 years. And I had the head knowledge, and I knew, and I was like, why do I keep doing this? And, it was because we don't rise to, in a stressful situation, or when we're faced with a choice, we don't rise to the level of our ideals. We fall to the level of our nervous system and our conditioning, okay, of our patterns. And that's what was happening to me every time. I hadn't trained my nervous system to feel a new safety, to feel a new familiarity. And in order to deal with traumas, yes, I don't really, trauma, this word is just thrown around, but it can be anything. It can be like a 5-year-old you on the playground and someone says, "You can't sit with us." And that stayed with you and made you feel unlovable because 5-year-old you didn't have the emotional processing or tools to understand that, that's not about me or anything. So it's simple things like that. I've had lots of people say, "Oh no, I had a great childhood." But then you hear a little story like that when we do some breathing and stuff, because what the breath work effectively does is, unlike therapy, so what I've found is where you go in being like, this is what I want to work on. This is why I'm coming to therapy. I mean, when I went to therapy, I had a list. So I was like, these are my problems. These are what I need to fix. And obviously it wasn't that simple. But with breath work, your body leads. So you become embodied. And this is where we need to be to start looking at the traumas, to start breathing it out through our lives. Everything is stored in our cells. Traumas, emotions that we didn't know how to process, negative thoughts, all of it sits here if we don't properly release it. And
isn't that a crazy thought? And I just want to stop there for a second. This
yeah,
isn't just foo-foo. This is now science. There's a lot of books and logic coming out. The body keeps the score, and you often say, "Oh, well, I'm just feeling heavy in my heart," or "Oh, that tension of today." People will point to their body. The reality is, the science now is proving that we inject and store our emotional baggage in our heart, and a lot of the disease is caused by that. I think the precipice book is "Body Keep the Score." So that's a little context to what Kate's talking about here, and at what point you release it and release the trauma, it actually, or release even the emotion, then we don't have to carry it around anymore. The terrifying part is not only do we carry it, but we actually pass that epigenetically on to our ancestors or to our children going forward. And so it's really important we deal with this stuff. Otherwise, it becomes this generational pattern.
exactly. And yeah, so just circling back to kind of summing up what the idea why we teach the regulation first is, it's so that you can regulate your nervous system, so that you're not in fight or flight, so that you can actually hear what's being said, so that you're not hearing through the filter of your wounds, so that you're not seeing through the filter of your wounds. Because why do most fights with couples or anyone happen? People get offended. They see through the lens of their wounds. And with regulation, it just helps you to slow down so that you're not body hijacked. by your emotions, by your trauma. And it's such a beautiful feeling, because you really do, for the first time, personally, what I felt was I felt in control, as much as we can be in control. But, when I'm in a stressful situation now, I know it's like pause. I take it immediately, breathe. And I
You can
just
shift the
let.
whole modality so very quickly doing it, and I've seen you do a difference with your work as you do it really, really deeply. I think back of the brain is the limbic brain, eat it, kill it, mate with it. All it wants to know is eat it, kill it, mate with this, and most of us walk around in that brain. And so what you do is very effectively help people shift under frontal cortex so that they're actually regulating as conscious humans and not monkeys running around killing each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Beautiful. Talk for a second about this, then the rewiring part. So first thing you teach people is how to regulate, how to just calm down and get control of the situation in these situations, so it's not always knee-jerk reactions. So Kate, this concept of rewiring really is remarkable, that you're able actually to change your brain, change your mindset by doing this protocol. And again,
Yeah.
breath work is so powerful at doing, and it seems to be a quicker, more sticky, lasting modality. Talk to me a little bit about what your process looks like, and then what some of the outcomes you see. What you see people doing as they're rewiring their brains.
So how it kind of looks is, so the process that I like to follow in this is, you first notice. So something comes up, I'm triggered. You want to notice that. And then the next thing, you're going to name it. You're going to name what you're feeling, what's coming up. If you're at that point where you can identify the pattern, you name that. And then it's regulate, breathe, control. And once you've done that, then you respond. So that whole process is how we start to rewire. So instead of something happens, I'm triggered, I react, there's no second pause. There's no space in between the trigger and the reaction. What this teaches you, what we go through in the course, is how to take that pause, what to go into, just so that you give yourself, it's almost like you give yourself this breathing room. You step away. You're not overrun by the emotion. By naming what's happening in you, it immediately separates you from the emotion. It immediately separates you from the experience. And then by choosing to regulate in that moment, you are calming your nervous system, moving out of fight or flight. And that may take 15 minutes. The other day I had 5 minutes and I was good to go and I was good to respond. Sometimes it's longer, but then you get to the response. And it's so freeing to be able to not, as I say, I love the expression, to be hijacked by your emotions, but that's essentially what happens. And then you say things you don't mean, you do things you don't want to do. So just having that kind of pause, just following that process, you're able to start to choose a new pathway.
So there's two parts to this. It sounds like the first is actually implementing in your daily life of teaching you actually how to then, repattern in your outward life. But I'd like to also talk about in the little program you're going to be running, the second phase of it is the rewire. What can individuals expect through the breath work to happen in this module or this section, and what's it being experienced to help you rewire?
So, in every session, we start with one breath work and we use that throughout. And then each session has a different breath work inside. And the breath work, because it slows your nervous system down, because it is regulating you, you start to see it slows you down. I think this is really the main thing with rewiring, is that ability to slow you down. So using this breath work to slow you down, we delve into a bit of inner child work in there as well. So this is what we're getting to. I was focusing on the wrong thing. So a big part of obviously my journey and of my work and what I do on my retreats and what you did with me was the inner child work. And I think we have to go back to the first time that you experienced, where you felt you weren't loved or something like that. And through the breath work and through the various questions that we've got in the workbook and stuff, we guide people through a process of slowly sort of unwinding that trigger, unwinding that memory in childhood, so that you can actually stop being a prisoner of your past and you understand the pattern, and then you can start to change the pattern, because everything happens in childhood. Our patterns were formed before we were aware of them. So this process, this step is really going back into that childhood space, understanding why we do the things we do, and then actually starting to implement through the breath work, through various prompts and guidance, we start to learn how to change that.
And I'm sure you've seen a lot of it doing healing all over the world, but it's not uncommon. And so no judgments that you'll see people yawning or crying or shaking or a lot of tingling where there's actually physically releasing this emotional stuff that you've been packing around like 100 pounds for years. You want to talk about that a little bit just so people can know what to expect? It's actually a little bit
So you
poo-poo.
understand what to expect in the breathwork session. There's a bunch of different things that will happen, and I like to look at it like this: is when you're angry or you're upset, you have a voice, you can speak, but your body can't voice it to you. So crying is like one way our body expresses in breath work when it's moving through stuck emotions or traumas, or when it's releasing, really. Different things can happen in the body. So your whole body can tingle. I've had people say they've literally from their neck down have just gone numb, like completely numb, and then kind of come out of that. Some people shake, and I personally love shaking. I always say this in a session: if you feel like there's something in your hands, or just shake. What do animals do when they get a fright? I see it with my dog all the time. Like if there's a dog that comes out of nowhere and she shakes, she'll like look at it and then she shakes, because they're moving the trauma out of their bodies. They don't store it. So that's kind of what happens in a session. You can feel immense euphoria. That's the other side of it, which is the amazing side. I've also seen people, if you're moving through fear, your body can go so cold, and it's happened to me as well with my coach. I would go from freezing cold, feeling fear, needing blankets on top of me, to then moving through anger, and you sweat, and then I was just boiling hot. So all of these things, the numbness, the tingling, the hot, the cold, the shaking, it's how our body releases that trauma. So if something's happening, I always say, this is beautiful. That's what you want. Like whatever the feelings are, just breathe into it and breathe through it.
And I just can't emphasize, I was able to go to one of the retreats that Kate ran, and I saw one individual in particular, a big burly guy, operated cranes and released a ton of baggage he'd been carrying for years and years and years. You'd never guess it. And at the end, it commented that was those couple of 3 days is equivalent of 20 years of talk therapy. And I think it really is true. It's amazing how rapidly we can get rid of some of the stuck emotions and the challenges and the patterns that we have. The final little section is, now that you've got yourself regulated, you're rewired, you've done some release work, the final little module that you're going to be talking about is realigning your life. Talk about that for 1 minute, and then we'll put a wrap on this.
So realigning, I mean, I really like it, because I feel like we've really got to get into like the tough stuff in the beginning, and the realignment really is, I mean, this is what has come from both of our work, because your values, I remember having so many conversations actually on retreat and thinking, I need to go redo my values, because you had such amazing insights as to how to actually structure them. And I thought, hang on, I don't know if I actually know if I've properly defined my values. So, that's part of the realign, because in order to really come into alignment in our lives, you got to know like what you stand for, like who are you? What do you tolerate? How are you going to have a healthy relationship if you haven't kind of defined what you are, but then also what you're not? So we go into that in the realignment. And then one more thing actually that is the precursor to that is shame. So letting the shame go, because shame is the thief of joy. And as I said in the beginning, it only dies when you drag it into the light of exposure. So that's quite a deep session we go into in order to realign. Why do we feel shame? Because we don't forgive ourselves, because we don't forgive others. Those are
in the rewire? That's in the rewire module, correct?
Yeah, the shame is in the
It's such an interesting thing as you look at Hawkins' map of consciousness. The lowest frequency is always that of shame, and it's just amazing how many of us deal with it. And I think most people here drag it into the antiseptic sun of sunlight. I don't think that you're saying necessarily that needs to take every wrong thing you've done and jerk it out and expose it and put it on the cover of the Rolling Stones. I think you're just saying this is get it out. You don't have to blow your life up with these things. I think you're just saying is appropriately bring it forward and just let it go. Is that correct? I mean, we don't want to scare people to
That's
death
it.
with.
No. We don't want to scare anyone, but it's just changing that narrative in your head, because when you carry a lot of shame, you think that you are bad. So by the end of this course, the goal is, I mean, this was my process and this is kind of what this course is. The goal is that you get to a point where you're like, hold on, I'm not bad. Like, I am not bad. So you are able to release that narrative. And in so doing, I mean, that is the only power that shame has, to tell you that you are bad, to make you believe that you are bad. So with all this work of regulating, with rewiring, with, the forgiveness part of it, and then figuring out who you are, you get to a point where you don't need to carry that anymore. So you can let that.
Kate, not in a million years would we ever let some bully come in and just beat a 5-year-old. We would never allow some big brute to walk in and just kick and spit and snob and yell and diminish and cower a 5-year-old into a corner. But the reality is most of us do that very thing to our own 5-year-old. And those patterns don't get broken until we take that little buddy and protect them. We've got to nurture and protect and care for our little 5-year-olds. And I think that from my experience, that's what you're doing in that session.
Yeah.
Well, I've got to tell you, Kate, your work is just remarkable, and I'm so grateful for healers like you. I'm so excited to expose this powerful content. Again, back to my cycle of flow. I love the models that I bring out. They're so powerful, and even the ethos and the values and the blueprints, and it's powerful, and it allows us to really get stability and guardrail and get our life. But if we do not take care of this front precipice piece, which is dealing with our own garbage, untrenching the crap from our life, and then releasing particularly some of the childhood stuff and dealing with epigenetic stuff. The reality is we continue to, when we come around, hit these clunky spots. And so I talk a lot about, as we tip that cycle of force over, the first thing has to be to lubricate that center spot and to extract the grit and the grime. And this is how you do it. Now, this is one of multiple modalities, but I will confidently tell you, from my experience, this is one of not only the least painful ones, but also the more joyful ones that is accelerated, that sticks. So I'm really excited to have Kate share this with my community and audience. Kate, before we go out, is there any final little comments that you'd like to make, or any just little final statements you'd like to make to the community?
I just think that if, anybody's watching this who is really struggling with everything that we've just spoken about, and, I think that kind of pain tends to isolate people. I mean, that's the greatest trick, of the enemy, to isolate you in your pain and to make you think it's just happening to you. I think I never thought there was a way out for me. I never thought that I could change my life. I never thought that I could be better. Not to mention rewire my patterns, be in a really healthy relationship, have, everything that I've wanted starting to happen and come into my life, being able to consciously communicate with my partner in just the most beautiful, loving, and healthy way. I never would have thought any of this was possible. And it's possible because of this work. So if you're kind of on the fence of like, should I do it? Shouldn't I do it? Like, absolutely, you should do it, because if it worked for me, it can work for anyone. I was the tough nut to crack, and I cracked. And look at all this
Well, and
sunshine
I think
that came
until
out.
you've been through it, you can't really articulate it and teach it well. And that's the joy and the beauty. And we should never feel sad about these things. If you
Yeah.
are struggling with really challenging things, whether it's an addiction, or whether it's a deep anxiety or an eating disorder, or a mistake you've made that you're holding deep shame, I don't feel sorry for you. I bless you, because it becomes the rocket fuel to actually really have impact. And we all get the opportunity to face them. The question is will you go down the belly of the beast, grab it by its gizzards and pull it out and look at it, or do you want to just keep sugarcoating it and hiding it and letting it canker? It's not till we look it in the eyeballs it gets better. And Kate, I really honor you and commend you for the courage that you have of just kind of pulling it out there into the visibility of the sunlight, your issues. And you really, truly are a remarkable healer. And I'm so grateful to have you in my life. And I'm so excited to share this with the community. So thank you so much being with us, Kate.
Thank
And
you.
let's help help the individuals who are struggling with anxiety and depression and the shame and guilt. And the great news about this little program is it's very approachable, very engageable. We've got it in 3 little programs and super simple to engage. It's not like jumping off a high dive cliff. It's just a jump little into the pool and swim around and get the exposure to it. So really excited to also participate in this, Kate.
Thank you, Rich.
Well, thank you so much for being on the program, and there's going to be a lot more to come. So thank you, my friend, and welcome again to Calm the Chaos. We look forward to having you on the next episode where we face our fears spiritual to reality, and we look for ways to find flow, tools, resources, and frameworks that we can help you operate just in more clarity and more calm. Till next episode.